Now, one of the things I want to start with is one revelation, the first revelation that comes in Nauvoo when we get there. And it's section 124 of your Doctrine and Covenants. If you have that, follow along with me. It's the longest section in the entire Doctrine and Covenants. It is huge. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you because it would take too long. What I want to show you is just some interesting things within section 124. Notice, jump all the way to verse 125. Just take a look at what the Lord does here through revelation of Joseph. He re-shows in verse 125 that Joseph is his prophet, his seer, the president of the church. He then lists the members of the first presidency in verse 126, including Sidney Rigdon and a man named William Law that we'll talk about in the martyrdom video. In verse 127, you get Brigham Young listed as the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. You get the members of the 12 listed in verse 129 and 130. You get the Nauvoo High Council and their names listed in verse 131 and 132. You get the stake presidency listed in verses 133 to 136. You then get the Elders Quorum president in verse 137. You get the 70s, who in Joseph's time, by the way, a 70 was seen as somebody to help preach the gospel, almost like a standing missionary. It wasn't until later that they got moved more into a general authority role in the church. But you get the 70s listed in 138, or the presidency of the 70. You get the presiding bishopric listed in verse 141. And you get the deacons, teachers, and priest quorum presidents listed in verse 142. What I'm trying to show you here is, if you take a look at this list that I just read off in section 124, this starts to look a lot like the church that you and I are familiar with today, with the first presidency, a quorum of the 12 apostles, 70s, high council, stake presidents, elders quorum, a presiding bishopric. But what I want you to stop for 1 minute, if you go all the way back to one of the earliest lessons that I gave you in this series, when the church was organized in April of 1830, that's not at all how this church looked. This church was organized very simply, with Joseph following a traditional Christian model of almost like a Presbyterian or Methodist model, or where you have a presiding elder. Joseph was the first elder, and Oliver Cowdery was the second elder. And things ran off a council of leading elders. It took a decade, really, in 1841, we're seeing it 10 years later, for the church structure, the ecclesiastical structure that you and I are familiar with, to come to fruition. That's how the ongoing restoration works, line upon line, bit by bit. As I said in an early video, I'll say again, I'm not sure in 1830 Joseph understood the church would look like that. Joseph didn't receive a 100-point plan from the Lord. He received a 1-point plan, as I like to say, and God gave him 1 point, and then another point, and then another point. And as he acted on that, God revealed more. And as Joseph saw more and had more needs, God gave him more that responded to those needs and helped lay the foundation for the ecclesiastical structure we see in the church today.